What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another About Teams video. In today's episode, we're going to continue our NFL segment we did make sure to check out if you haven't already, our AFC East and North predictions, or not predictions, but what one thing specifically or just one thing in general needs to happen for every team to make the playoffs. Obviously, some teams are easier than others and vice versa. But with that being said, Nick, I think we'll start with probably the easiest one we'll ever have on our list. The Kansas City Chiefs, the two-time Super Bowl champion, or Patrick Mahomes 3-time, but 2 in a row Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. And, we obviously don't like saying, if they stay healthy, this and that. But if Patrick Mahomes is on the field, he proved last year. I mean, he had Kadarius Toney, MVS dropping balls left and right. He proved last year, as long as Patrick Mahomes is on the field, and Andy Reid's coaching on that sideline, the Kansas City Chiefs will be just fine. They're going to win 10, 11 games. They may not be like that one seed they were with Tyreek, chasing 14 wins a season, but, they don't need to. They proved last year they can go on the road in Buffalo, tough environments, Baltimore, and then obviously beat San Francisco. So I'm not worried. As long as Mahomes is on the field, this team is making the playoffs.
Yep, I agree. I said I wrote out wide receivers help Mahomes. Don't be dropping.
Yeah, that is true. Well, it is curious with this Rashee Rice situation. Because he was their best receiver last year. If he's gone, you got Travis Kelce, who's 35.
Xavier Worthy's probably going to be their one.
Yeah, so then you got rookie. But who knows? With Kansas City, Xavier Worthy going to be 1,000 yards. So, at this point,
I also said defense don't sell because their defense was great last year.
Yeah.
And it's what won them. Probably
they brought back Chris Jones, but they did lose to Jerry Sneed. So,
but it
is interesting.
McDuffie's another incredible corner, though. Like he's pretty much a.
Oh yeah. Steve Spagnuolo just has great defensive game plans. Agreed. For me, next team, Chiefs, kind of obvious, but next one, Raiders. For me, for the Raiders, if there was one thing I would have to say specifically, it's going to be continue to play with the physicality they did under Antonio Pierce, because they really bought into what Antonio Pierce did. Josh McDaniels was just a disaster alone. And their defense was very good. The Raiders played in that infamous 3-0 game late in the season last year. But for the Raiders, their defense got a lot better under Antonio Pierce. And a more blatant answer would be Aiden O'Connell. If he starts, just takes that next step. We saw some ups and downs with him last year coming out of Purdue, kind of a raw prospect, but he had some good games. There were games where he threw for 4 touchdowns. There was obviously games against the Vikings where he put up 0 points. So if they want to make the playoffs in this division, they just got to be able – Aiden O'Connell's got to take that step to being like a top 20 quarterback because you have Devontae Adams there. So that's a great wide receiver one to help you. And then that defense led by Max Crosby is just ferocious. For me, if they're going to be in a lot of close games, they're going to have to do infamously what the Vikings did in 2022. I believe they went 11-0. The Raiders will need to have a great one possession game record. They'll need to go 8-2, 8-3, in my opinion. They just got to be able to close games out if they want a shot at making the playoffs, because their roster isn't talented enough to win blowout games besides the Brandon Staley Chargers game. For me, those are just a couple of things that stick out to me. If this Raiders team wanted to make the playoffs next year, all those things would need to happen.
I think great minds think alike, because I had pretty much 2 of the same points. I said first point was for Aiden O'Connell to just get the ball to Devontae, get him 10,
Jacoby
12
Myers,
And then my second point was late game crunch time defense. If you can close out games, like you just said, they'll be in a lot of close games because of their defense. And if they've got a lead, hold it. And, maybe you'll win 8 or 9 games, steal a few on the road from the Chargers or the Broncos or an NFC team.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said that Vikings because no team, I don't think ever again in our lifetime will go 11-0 in one-score games. I mean, everything needs to go right that year.
Right.
It was a great season, though, as a fan for me to watch 2013. But even if the Raiders go like 7-3 in one-score games, just very effective. 70% of the time they're winning. That could get them into the playoffs. At least at the 7th seed now. So win 9 games if they want to. Yeah, but those would pretty much be the things that need to happen. For me, an interesting team. Why don't you start with this one first? The Los Angeles Chargers.
All right. So this one was a little similar to the Raiders, but I just said step up in crunch time, step up in close games because they've lost so many close games or just blown so many fourth quarter leads in the past, however many years. Probably because of Brandon Staley, like we all know. The guy's kind of a doofus. And also just wide receivers help out Herbert. Like that wide receiver room is rough right now. It's, the one is probably Ladd McConkey or I'm trying to think of who else. Quentin Johnson. But we saw how he was last year. But just those guys need to step up for Herbert to give him some help. Their defense is probably going to be humming because Harbaugh is such a defensive-minded coach. He's probably going to, have them within the top half of the league when it comes to defense. But just step up and don't blow these late-game leads.
Yeah. For me, I agree. Obviously, those blown late-game leads, but I trust Harbaugh. I don't think that will happen. I mean, obviously, 1 or 2 may happen this season, but Brandon Staley felt like every other week. That won't happen. I trust Harbaugh, especially, he has a great track record in the NFL and in college. For me, it's going to be wide receiver step up. As great as the Chargers, or as much improved as the Chargers defense, I think will be. And I think their O-line additions were great. Joe Alt is obviously franchise-changing tackle. Same with Rashawn Slater. So you got 2 really great tackles. For me, it's going to come down to, though, at the end of the day, Herbert's going to get you the ball. Can Ladd McConkey step up? Can Quinn Johnson take a much improved step? And if they do, then you got 2 solid wide receivers. So it's real. I'm looking at those 2 and maybe like Josh Palmer. Can the receivers just do their job? Can they get open? Quinn Johnson, obviously a rough year, but we've seen receivers have rough years and bounce back. So we'll see. I assume he at least put the work in during the offseason because if I'm Quinn Johnson and I'm looking at, I believe he was taken where like 4 receivers went in a row, and you're with Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison, 2 receivers that kind of, were really good last year. And you're like, I don't want to be known as the guy in the middle that was a bust. So for him, I'm using that as motivation to only get better. We'll see how he does. We'll see, obviously, rookie Ladd McConkey. So it's going to come down to, though, Herbert's going to get you the ball. Can you catch it? Can you create separation whatsoever? Because I think the Chargers, they beefed up the trenches, which I loved. But at the end of the day, you still need playmakers to just do their job. So that's what I'm looking at when it comes to the Chargers.
Okay. Yeah. And then last, but
we might as well skip this team. But we'll do it out of respect. We got to do every team. The Denver Broncos.
You want to take it or do you want me to go first?
For me, it would need to be Bo Nix has a CJ Stroud type rookie year if they want to do anything. Because for me, the Broncos, Sean Payton, so-called offensive mastermind, I don't really know. We'll see. We'll see what he does with Bo Nix. But if Bo Nix is able to have a CJ Stroud rookie year and elevate these receivers, like, maybe see something we haven't seen from Cortland Sutton yet. Not sure who the Broncos running back is. If that defense, I guess, is scrappy enough to like a top 15 unit, top 10 borderline. Obviously, they lost like Justin Simmons and players like that. So not sure what will happen. But, yeah, Bo Nix will need to have the CJ Stroud rookie year and take the league by storm. If the Broncos want to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I wrote the same thing. Bo Nix pretty much is their only chance of making the playoffs, and that's not even saying that he's incredible. It's saying that if he doesn't have some improbable, insane year, they're not making it because they just don't have the talent. Their defense is okay. They've got a few defensive pieces, but not what they need to carry them to the playoffs. And Sean Payton has not looked good since he's gotten there. He obviously hated Russell
Well, ever
Wilson.
since Drew Brees he hasn't made the playoffs. So
I mean, but according to Sam, Bo Nix is the next Drew Brees coming out of college. So
yeah,
guess
you're right. We should probably well, let's not overreact. We do have Drew Brees coming out, so maybe just
right.
let Bo Nix cook.
I mean, they may be a Super Bowl favorite by like week 4.
Yeah, let
He's completed
Bo
85%.
Nix cook, and that will be the way they win this. Yeah, Broncos interesting team, but high draft pick next year probably be interesting to see what they do with that. And then that division's done. AFC South. Let's start. It's only fair to start off with the reigning champs, Houston Texans, and it's simple for me. They got the roster. It's just CJ Stroud continues to improve and just takes care of the football. You have the defense now. You have the weapons. Don't do anything. You don't need to do anything special. Even though he is special, he has the ability to scramble and make throws on the run. Just don't make stupid plays in crunch time where, like, oh, you're one of those teams that wins games by 30, but then, like, loses all these one-score games because you make one or two bad, awful reads. So, for me, CJ Stroud just taking care of the football, getting into his playmakers. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. Obviously, he'll have some turnovers, but just continue to improve in his mental aspect of the game and reading defenses and just not making any stupid throws where we saw great QBs like Brett Favre do that just ultimately cost your team's games.
Yeah, CJ's got to stay consistent.
Yeah.
They just re-signed Nico Collins. What was it? 3 years,
Yeah.
$72 million. So he's got a pretty penny.
Got the bag.
Don't worry about that. And then the defense just has to continue to step up. Will Anderson's got to grow.
They added Danielle Hunter, so just
Danielle Hunter's going to be a huge help. Derek Stingley's obviously a stud. They got Jeff Okudah, who's probably going to be their cornerback too. He's on like a redemption path right now after looking like a bust with the Lions. But yeah, if they can improve on what they did last year, they'll win the division again easy and probably be a top 4 seed in the AFC.
Yeah, no. People are looking at this team to challenge the Chiefs, and rightfully so with that roster. Pretty much an easy team that will probably be a lock. Next team, controversial. Some people probably have them as a wild card. Some people, obviously, they missed last week of the season last year. Jacksonville Jaguars. For me, it's Trevor Lawrence takes another step to his game that we haven't seen yet. He's always been kind of a great passer. And part of it, last year his regression was the offensive line. So maybe it might be priority 1, offensive line protects Trevor Lawrence because when he has time, we've seen what he's been able to do. He's got an interesting set of playmakers. Obviously lost Calvin Ridley, but signed Gabe Davis. You still have Christian Kirk. You drafted Brian Thomas in the first round. So we'll see. But Trevor Lawrence has to take another step to his game, and they elevate in what will it be now for him, year 4. So that's what I'm interested in seeing.
Yeah, I think we have the same list because I wrote pretty much the same exact thing.
Yeah. Offensive line has to protect, though. That might honestly be my number 1 because if Trevor Lawrence, he obviously suffered that high ankle sprain because of the offensive line that ruined their season, and they would kind of get punked. And that's why some of these games they're only able to put up 10 points because ETN couldn't get going. So I might be looking at the offensive line as well.
Yeah. How about
you cook up next then? Because
So I'll get into
Colts.
I'll get into the Colts. Yeah, that's probably my more interesting one. For the Colts, I said in order for them to make the playoffs, Anthony Richardson not only has to stay on the field, but he can't hold the team back. He can't play. He can't play like bad and be throwing 3 picks a game, bad decisions. 3 and outs, all that stuff. Maybe running with the football when he shouldn't, because we saw he was an aggressive runner before he got hurt, and that ultimately might have gotten him hurt. But just don't hold the team back. Take those little baby steps you need to take. You're not in a huge hurry. You don't have to be the guy right now. You've got a pretty solid team. Like we saw, you had a solid team last year, and you have the capability to taking your team to the next level, but it doesn't have to be all at once. So just slowly grow. Don't hold back. Don't hold back the team, and just grow with the team and stay healthy.
We saw a lot of great stuff from him before he got injured, but yeah, you're right. Ultimately, got to stay on the field. And for me, it's just in this division where you got the Texans, a feisty Jaguars team, a Tennessee team that made some good offseason acquisitions. There is little room for error in this division. So for me, it's probably Anthony Richardson not having like those simple rookie mistakes because basically he is entering another rookie year. But he has the advantage because he basically sat for the whole year, was able to read what defenses were doing. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does. But for them to make the playoffs, he's just gonna have to be good. Simple as that. You got Shane Steichen, one of the best coaches in the league, or at least top 5 offensive-minded head coach. We did with Gardner Minshew last year, almost bring them to the playoffs. And obviously, for me, I want to see him just throw the ball to Michael Pittman more. We saw Gardner Minshew be able to do that effectively, and it worked because Michael Pittman is a really good receiver, and I feel like him and Richardson just didn't have that connection quite yet, and maybe they'll work on that this offseason. But I want to see Michael Pittman and A-Rich get that connection because if they want to make the playoffs, Michael Pittman's going to need to have at least 1,000 yards. And when Richardson was playing, he kind of wasn't really on that track. It was Gardner Minshew was kind of force-feeding him, but maybe you don't want to do it like in a Cooper Kupp way, just getting him the ball every play, but he's a really good receiver. You want at least 10 targets a game for him.
Yeah. Right.
But Richardson continued to develop. And then final team on the list, the Tennessee Titans, a very interesting team. I think we might both have this one on the list, though. I'm looking at Will Levis. When I think of this team, similar to who did we talk about earlier? I forget who it was, or Aiden O'Connell. He had some good games. He had some bad games. Will Levis, right on the scene, first game, threw for 4 touchdowns, no picks. And he had a decent rookie year. I thought he was kind of, underappreciated. He wasn't bad with the football. He obviously had some turnovers, but, it was his first year kind of thrown into the fire midway through the season with a not great supporting cast. But now he enters the offseason. New head coach, Brian Callahan. You got D-Hop. They signed Calvin Ridley. They got more playmakers, Tony Pollard, great receiving back. So I'm interested to see what this Tennessee team does. But if they want to make the playoffs, Will Levis is going to have to take another step in this division where a lot of young QBs reside. So it'll be interesting to see.
Okay. This might be the first one we actually have a different answer on. I wanted to go Will Levis because, quarterback's the most important position on the field for any team's success. But I actually went other side of the ball. I just said the defense has to lead the way. I feel like their defense has been pretty solid the past few years. Obviously, without Mike Vrabel, it might be a different story. But I still trust, their guys like Jeffrey Simmons. They just drafted T'Vondre Sweat in the second round. Was it T'Vondre Sweat?
I believe it was second round.
Yeah. And I loved him coming out of college, so I think he's going to be huge for them. But I think their defense needs to lead the way and give Will Levis that breathing room he needs. Because if the defense is giving up 28 points a game and making every game a shootout, that's just going to put more pressure on Levis to be perfect. And
I don't disagree with you. We saw our Tennessee teams, like you said, led by Mike Vrabel. Like that time they were the 1 seed and Ryan Tannehill was the QB. Like they weren't happy. Exactly. That was the defense. But the thing is now, if they had Mike Vrabel, I probably would have said the defense. But now they're fully invested in the offense. It felt like all their offseason acquisitions were to the offense, their head coach, offensive-minded. But like you said, they still have Jeffrey Simmons, so who knows? Probably will need to be the defense too, but I feel like they invested so much into this offense that they just trust whoever they put at defense, they'll be a defensive coordinator. They'll just be able to get the job done with the playmakers they've had before. But I mean, they traded away Kevin Byard in midseason last year, so it'll be interesting to see how the defense does play. But yeah, like you said,
L'Jarius Sneed too. They did.
They did trade for L'Jarius Sneed, so that's a big. So it'll be interesting to see if they kind of made some changes on both sides, but I feel like they're more skewed to their offense, so that's what I'm looking at, or maybe that's what I have my eyes more on. Like, okay, we know Tennessee's defense is going to be good, but Will Levis, what are you going to do with all these moves? So yeah. I don't disagree, though. That's a good answer.
They're definitely surrounding Levis with all the pieces that they can. Obviously, they had to lose Derrick Henry, but bring in
getting Pollard or better receiving back should be interesting. But yeah, with that being said, so then probably brings us to the end of our NFL AFC edition. What every team needs to make the playoffs. If you haven't already, make sure to check out our AFC East and North teams from yesterday, as today was South and West, and then probably later on this week, we'll get you guys with the NFC teams. It's a very talented league, so it's very easy to come up with reasons for why teams can make this playoffs. Because even looking at the Titans who are projected to finish fourth, there's a lot of optimism for that team. But yeah, with that being said, thank you guys for listening to our NFL one reason every team can make the playoffs edition. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.